1 billion. Think about that number. That's 1,000 million. It's almost hard to wrap your brain around, but let's break that number down. If there are 1,000 different gaming mice out there and 1,000 different gaming keyboards and 1,000 different headsets, that means that there is 1 billion different combinations of peripherals that you could be using with your gaming PC. That's a staggering number. How are you supposed to ever figure out what's best for your setup or your gaming style? Well, while we can't actually figure that out for you today specifically, we can let you know how to narrow down your search and make the most informed decision that you can. So I did a little very unofficial research by searching broad terms on Amazon for mice, keyboards, and headsets, and the numbers were actually much higher than I anticipated. Yes, certainly some of these are duplicate listings, but if we assume that the actual number of different products is actually 1/10 of the number of results that I was finding, that still makes for 98 billion different combinations. Holy smokes, let's get to narrowing that down for you. And if this video helped you out at all, be sure to get subscribed at that obnoxious little red button down there and also hit that bell. We'll take this one component at a time, first hitting mice, then keyboards, then headsets. Despite most people's focus on graphics cards or processors, peripherals are actually the thing that you most interface with in your gaming PC setup and the thing that could play the biggest role in in-game performance for you. Get a keyboard with keys that are too close together or a mouse that doesn't fit your hand right, and you could easily find yourself being the first person eliminated in a battle royale. Get a headset that doesn't give you proper spatial awareness, and you'll constantly get snuck up on from behind. It's a lot to consider, and budget certainly plays a lot of those decisions, so let's get down to brass tacks. Gaming mice have been evolving rapidly over the years. Gone are the days when everybody used the same beige mouse with a rollerball that came with their compact Presario. Mice have branched out into several very distinct categories, each serving their own specific niche in the gaming industry. The first thing to consider here is what type of game you want to play. I know that sounds very restrictive, and some people certainly play more than one type, but take this mouse for example. This is the EVGA X15, a purpose-built MMO gaming mouse. What makes it an MMO mouse? It's this crazy amount of buttons on the side that you can use for key bindings or macros. Lots of MMO players use complicated sequences of keystrokes or button presses to do things like casting spells, triggering abilities, or switching weapons on the fly. And having the ability to do that all at your fingertips mean that you can spend more time focusing on the gameplay on screen. Consider an MMO mouse if you play games like World of Warcraft or even Destiny 2. Maybe your preference is more for first-person shooters, in which case the X20 would be more your speed. You can see here the button configuration is much different with just 3 buttons on the side as opposed to 12. One of the buttons is a large sniper button, which temporarily lowers the DPI of the mouse, allowing for more precise movements and shots. It also comes with a sensor for liftoff distance, which allows FPS players to reorient their mouse on their mouse pad without turning the character around in-game. FPS mice are great for any first-person shooter like Doom Eternal or Valorant. These are the 2 main categories to think about. However, there are many other mice to consider. Lightweight gaming mice have been rocketing up in popularity with serious gamers. Lighter mice are quicker to move side to side, easier to stop on a dime to get the right aim, better at flick shot actions, and less fatiguing to use. However, they do sacrifice things like additional buttons, and depending on their construction, even structural rigidity at times. This is the Cooler Master MM711, and it weighs a feathery 60 grams and comes with a super lightweight paracord cable. If you're big into super fast games like CSGO or Apex Legends, consider a lightweight mouse. The next thing to think about is, do you want the convenience of wireless connectivity? Mice like this Cooler Master MM831 are getting better with every generation as far as latency and battery life. Wireless mice used to be a liability when in a fast-paced game, but a lot of wireless mice now come with different options depending on what you want to use them for. For instance, the MM831 lets you connect via Bluetooth, a wireless dongle, or wired via a cable. The wired option will give you the best latency and the quickest response time, but you'll be dragging around a cord. The Bluetooth option is super low energy and won't drain your battery quickly, but will be the slowest to respond to your inputs. This is probably fine for daily use or web browsing, but once you get in-game, it's probably best to switch to the wireless dongle, which is much closer in latency to the wired option, but does drain the battery faster. Wired mice do need to be charged usually every few days, but technology like Qi charging is now available for a little added convenience. For me, I prefer a wired mouse, as even though wireless is certainly more convenient, I never want to sit down at my PC and realize that I forgot to charge up my mouse last night and now it's dead. Another thing to consider here is your hand size and your grip preference. Mice like the MM711 are great, but if you have large hands and prefer to palm grip, the smaller size and low rise of the mouse body isn't ideal. Similarly, if you have smaller hands and want to just use your fingertips, a larger, heavier mouse like the X20 probably won't work for you either. When mouse shopping, pay attention to the listed weight, as anything under about 80 grams is lightweight, while mice weighing over 100 or 110 grams will feel noticeably heavier and slower in hand, but can provide added features that might make it worth it. You can also use this handy chart found on the Razer website to determine if your hand is small, medium, or large, and this chart on gamingsetup.com to find your hand size and a mouse that will work for you. Another consideration when it comes to mouse feel is the overall shape. Mice tend to come in two basic shapes, either ambidextrous or ergonomic. Ambidextrous mice are generally uniformly curved along the palm rest and buttons, while ergonomic mice have a slope to them corresponding to how your hand might more naturally sit. There's no right choice here, and it comes down to comfort, so if you have the opportunity to try out both shapes, you'll get an idea of which you prefer. As with almost any other product, once you get your main decision points nailed down, you can deep dive into the nitty-gritty. You can choose a mouse based on the sensor, or the DPI stepping, or even the switches used for the buttons. While we're not going to get into those points today, just know that a simple device like a mouse has almost infinite ways that it can be built, which is why there are so many of them on the market. The basic points are: identify the game type that you play most, figure out if you like a lighter mouse or a heavier one, pick wired or wireless, measure your hand size, and ergonomic versus ambidextrous. Now that we've got a mouse that fits our needs, let's move along to keyboards. We're going to take the same approach here and discuss the major decision points that you need to consider. The first is overall size and layout that you prefer. Keyboards typically can be boiled down into three main size groups. Full size, which comes with a standard 108 keys, including a number pad. 10 keyless, which has usually around 87 keys and omits the number pad but keeps the arrow and function keys. And 60%, which chops off the function row and dedicated arrow keys entirely. Each of these has its pros and cons. Personally, I can't live without my numpad, so when given a choice, I'll always go for a full-size board. Full-size boards like this AOC AKG 700 take up the most desk real estate and are the heaviest, but usually include some additional features on them like dedicated media keys or even multifunction scroll wheels. If you do any kind of data entry or word processing along with your gaming addiction, a full-size keyboard might be the best choice. Full size is also the most popular form factor by a wide margin, so you can often find a good selection of prices, brands, and colors. 10 keyless has been steadily gaining in popularity, and I use one for my testing setup behind me because I don't need the benefit of punching in any numbers into a spreadsheet. TKL keyboards are often a nice middle ground, as having the arrow keys is still really good, but it lets you reclaim a big chunk of your desk space. 60% keyboards are less common, but super popular among the custom keyboard community. Many custom builds are only available in this form factor, and you might see these being featured by keyboard enthusiasts and even some competitive gamers. It comes down to simplicity with this layout, as by taking away basically everything that a gamer might not need, you can have a more compact build that is easier to orient comfortably on a desk. Of course, that means that activating any F keys or using an arrow means a combination of keystrokes instead of a simple push. And 60% boards aren't for everybody. The next thing you need to decide on is what kind of switches you want. Switches come in several varieties, but the first choice you need to make is membrane versus mechanical. Membrane keyboards like this EVGA Z12 use a rubber membrane with contact points below each key that press down onto a PCB inside the keyboard to register a keystroke. Membrane keyboards are generally much less expensive to produce and carry correspondingly low price tags on store shelves. They can offer just as many features as mechanical boards and save you some money. But the trade-off is that the feel of the keys themselves is pretty mushy sometimes, and the sound isn't crisp and full. Here's an example of the sound of a membrane keyboard. The Z12 does offer something that's easier to pull off on a membrane keyboard, and that's dust and water resistance by way of these molded cover pieces that surround the stems. So if you accidentally spill your Dr. Pepper on your keyboard, it'll still be sticky, but probably won't lose any functionality. Mechanical keyboards will cost you more, but as a general rule are more satisfying to type on and can have a more customizable sound and feel. There are hundreds of types of mechanical switches, but to put it simply, switches are either linear, which are the quietest and smoothest, like these Cherry MX Red switches, clicky, like the Cherry MX Blue switches on the AOC board, or tactile, which is somewhere in the middle of the spectrum. I generally prefer a heavier linear switch or a medium tactile switch, as I find clicky switches to be obnoxiously loud. But some people love the feel of the clack clack under their fingers and wouldn't have it any other way. Once you've decided on these first 2 points, narrowing down your keyboard choice by features is the next step. Some things to consider. Like MMO mice, some keyboards come with macro buttons on the far left column. Do you need these? Will they help in your gameplay? Some keyboards have dedicated media and volume keys. Personally, this is a feature that I prefer and I look for, as having quick access to volume is helpful while editing. Some keyboards have a built-in LED screen that displays system stats, some have a scroll wheel, and some have a USB pass-through for easier cable routing. Also consider things like a detachable cable and adjustable feet. Obviously, some of these may weigh heavier than others, but as with everything else on this list, it does come down to personal preference. The last thing to consider is price. Unlike with mice, where you can generally find really great products for anywhere between $50 and $80, keyboards run a huge spectrum of prices. You can hop onto Amazon and pick up a basic RGB lit membrane keyboard that brands itself with gaming for maybe 15 bucks. Or you can go the full custom route and spend $1,000 or more. Even mainstream brands have a huge selection of price points. Companies like Corsair have a product stack from the $90 K60, a mechanical full-size keyboard, to the K100 for $230, also a full-size mechanical. Don't feel that because you only have $100 to spend that you can't get a great experience, or that your gameplay will necessarily suffer. Don't spend outside of your comfort zone because some esportser shoves their $1,000 full custom in your face. So let's recap keyboards. Pick your form factor, so that's full-size TKL or 60. Choose your switch type, either membrane, mechanical clicky, mechanical linear, or mechanical tactile. Identify your required extra features, and then set a budget and stick to it. Now on to headsets, and this might be the most tricky one of all. While I can tell you that this mouse weighs 60 grams, and I can tell you that a blue mechanical switch will sound like this, I can't tell you what the clamping force of a headset is in a scientific manner. I also can't tell you how these ear cups will fit your ears, or how comfortable this headband will be on your oddly misshapen skull. Headsets are very polarizing because while everybody uses a mouse and keyboard, some people don't even use a headset at all and instead rely on their computer speakers, which is perfectly acceptable. Also, I've posted headset reviews where the feedback has been a 50-50 mix between I agree with your points, this headset is great, and I hate you, this product sucks and it kicked my dog. As headsets are a derivative of headphones, a very traditionally opinionated and technical product segment among audiophiles, much of that carries over to people discussing gaming headsets, and I find that to just be inherently wrong. These aren't meant to serve the same function as a set of high-end audiophile cans, and an exaggerated bass curve or software-enhanced spatial audio may sound painful while listening to orchestral music, but might be essential to you winning your next deathmatch. Things to consider while looking at headphones are, in this order: comfort, price, sound, build quality, features, and microphone. Comfort comes first. If you can't wear them for a long period of time, then what's the point? Consider things like the plushness and shape of the ear cups. Do they surround your ears or do they sit on them? Is there enough cushion for your liking? Do they create a proper seal? How is the headband and the overall weight? Do they fold flat and stretch appropriately? What is the clamping force like on your particular head shape? Unfortunately, these are really best decided by trying on a pair, which isn't always possible. See if you have a friend who can help you out here, or even try going to a Best Buy or a Micro Center where they might have some on display. Next up is price, and this is pretty self-explanatory. You can pick up a basic gaming headset on Amazon for 20 bucks. But there are some great products in the $60 to $90 range that won't fall apart after a half hour. You can always go higher though, as these Corsair Virtuosos are up to $300. Is a $300 pair 6 times better than a $50 pair? No, probably not. But it does come down to the next point, which is sound reproduction. Sound quality is important in game for sussing out potential enemies hiding around the corner, or for hearing your teammates' instructions, or even for just enjoying the soundtrack of a single-player campaign. The more expensive headsets tend to have higher quality drivers, and some even have multiple drivers in each ear. The better your drivers, the easier it is to hear sound separation, like footsteps versus gunfire. Build quality is probably my next priority. These Virtuosos have a mostly metal construction, which makes them more resistant to damage, less prone to breaks or bends, and longer lasting overall. Plastic components are a good way to shave both money and weight, and there are many plastic headsets that get the job done. But as with anything, you pay for quality, and the higher end units tend to have more metal in them and feel more substantial in hand. You should also consider what features you require for your particular Discord server. Do you need to be able to mute your mic, or even flip it up and out of the way? Do you need a volume adjust on the headset itself? Do you want flashing RGB lights to show off on your Twitch stream? What about noise cancellation? And then the last thing is the microphone. In-game mics are a necessity these days, and even the cheapest ones will likely get the job done. But if you want better clarity, an expensive microphone built into a gaming headset will cost you a pretty penny. These have probably the best mic that I've ever used on a headset, but again, these cost over $200. A better mic will mean that your teammates can theoretically hear you better, but again, that might just come down to what headsets they are using. It's hard for me to prioritize a microphone when the people I'm speaking with might or might not be able to even tell the difference if they're wearing an older or muddy sounding unit. So, headset recap: comfort, price, sound, build quality, features, microphone. All right. We're all geared out with our peripheral setup. Now it's time to log in and show them what you got. We're going to continue our PC Gaming Basics series with graphics cards coming up soon on the channel. Be sure to subscribe, hit that bell, and leave a comment down below with your peripheral setup of choice. As always, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.